Okay. Um, so I just figured I'd do another example that was maybe a bit more, I don't want to say intense, but just has a bit more substance to it because we were dealing with making a rectangle object, and all shapes are pretty straightforward because their attributes are only their side lengths, really. If we could have gone way more in depth with how to physically make it, but remember, um, we're not thinking about physically making the object. We're making it a digital perspective, and we're not actually looking at rendering a visual of it. We're just kind of building the blocks that make it from almost like a search perspective. Um, so when thinking about that, I wanted to do a different example. So I'm going to do one with books. And when thinking about books, the easiest way to think about the key attributes with it is thinking about, you're going to Chapter's website, Indigo, Amazon, and like what are things that you would search for? Mainly Indigo. Amazon's way too broad, but like what are some things that are described in books? So making your new project, which I guess I'll go through it again. New project, or just this one here. You do your Java application, call it books. Actually, I'm gonna call it book because each one is a book. And remember, this one here, you want to call main. You want to make it main after. You don't want it to leave it as just book again, because that's what you want to make your class. You want to make the main one so we can run things later. So, and then right click here, new, and it should be the next one you see under here, Java class again, um, because well, I'm assuming you most recently used that, or frame will be there, but it should be there if you follow it along. If not, if it's not right here in your quick searches, go to other, and then you go to Java and Java class. And then next, we call it capital book again and go. So here it is. We need to set up, oh man, I've been doing so much Python lately. I forgot double slash here. So we set up our key attributes, and most of them are going to be strings. So we have a title. Oops, sorry. They all have to be private. So we have the title, we have the author, we have the publisher. Is it publisher? We have the genre, and probably the next one that we would have to have is I'm going to call it pages. All right, we have title, author, publisher, genre, and like the number of pages is, if someone wants to search for a short book versus a long book, they would search the number of pages. So these can be like, you can get even crazier. Like you can go with distributor. You could go with like cover type, hardcover, soft cover. You could go with binding. I learned those things from talking to my wife. I did not know about all those other things. So do your key attributes. Make it only as many as you need to make your program run. So you don't need to have 50 key attributes. So when we're doing this, now we obviously have to make the two constructors again. So public book, and I'm going to, and here I'm going to use string title. And this is a good time to talk about the difference between variables that we're dealing with here. So in where I'm typing right now, and you're following along, you're typing it here too, these ones in this part are called local variables. I gotta spell string right, because they will only exist, they're local to the method in here. They only exist in these two brace brackets, set brackets. If you like, right now it'll be weird because we call them the same thing, But really, if like if I called this num pages only exists in these two spots. It does not exist anywhere else in there. So if you use it, you try to use it elsewhere and you get an error, it's because it's local to this constructor only. These ones are the global variables, global because they can exist in any method anywhere. They exist, their limitations, I'm air quoting here, are these two yellow points, which are the entire object body. And that's where, like when you're thinking about local, if it sits in a method, whether it be the main method, an action performed, like the button pressed, whatever, or the methods that you're making, if you make it for the first time in this sort of area here between these two brackets, it no longer exists. As soon as this bracket ends, it is kind of like tossed to the wayside and it doesn't exist. That's why it's local to its own thing here. So we got to make all of our global variables equal to the things that are put in. And honestly, the nice thing is you actually don't have to go. I'm going in order here so I don't miss anything. But remember, you're typing it here. You could actually do pages now and then publisher and then genre. Like no one sees the inside of this code. As long as it works as it's supposed to, the order of your constructor doesn't necessarily have to be sequential like we have here. But I'm going to do it that way because it makes it a lot easier to just to make sure you didn't miss anything. And really, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do this. So because these two things are different, you can actually just use it without the this. So if the local and global variables are different, you can leave out this dot. And then here, I'm just going to copy these things here. Now, the only thing is, what's happening here is because there is no local thing to reference, it's trying to, like it says here, you're referencing itself, which there can be an error because these are never set. So you actually, you're setting it equal to like nothing, not like null is what the blank of, null is the blank of string, and you can't really do anything with null, so that's why we want to make sure they're all just the empty string, which is just like not even a space, just like here are some brackets to make it be a thing. So really, you want to make sure that you're setting everything in your default constructor to whatever the default thing is, which is 0 for numbers, 0.0 for doubles, and then for a character, it would have been just these two here. But for a string, it's a double quotes, character, it's a single quote. And then here's where I'm just going to do the comments for it and leave it as an activity for you, and then I'll do it after. But you want to do all the accessor methods, and then do all the mutator or modifier methods. Mutate or modifier. And then we're going to overwrite the toString. Sorry, I paused there because I'm like, I don't know if that's how you spell overwrite. Let me go back to the rectangle one. Override. We'll say override because overwrite does not sound right. So we're gonna do like that's the kind of what we should be doing most of the time. We the thing is, where it seems weird for us and why it's like a hard thing to get used to at the start is that we're used to writing code that when we run it, it actually does something. But all we're doing right now is setting up the foundation. So then when someone goes to use the book class, they can actually do so um, by making all these things happen. And a cool thing that we can do is once you make this like object here, so you can then store things more efficiently and more what's the other word I'm looking for? It's definitely efficiently and uh, like appropriately, I guess, in a way too. Because think about it, if we were making like with the array list assignment that you're potentially working on right now, just open it up. Instructions here. With this one, you're making the student grades program, or um, like you're, or like you would have tried to introduce a student class, which is what you can try to do now. But like with the student grades, um, the way you would have normally done it is you would have like got all the information and just kind of like stored them separately in different arrays and then pushed it all out. But with a class now, you can make a student class. You can actually have all the attributes that you want to have, like all the grades that they can have. And then what you can do is when you run uh, your form, it's actually making a new student object every time, and that object holds all this information. So you're actually doing the same amount of work by setting up this recipe right here, because the more you do um, in this, the easier it makes for you to do something bigger later on, because you can store more information with less work, with less like coding. So what would have been potentially 500 lines can be maybe 150 here, and then maybe like 200 in your maybe even less. So you're actually like condensing everything and making it work better. So that's why we're focusing on this. I also teach this because if you go on and next year you have to take some sort of programming class, you will quickly get to classes, and they might do the exact same job that I'm doing explaining it, but at least you've seen it and you've been exposed to it. I will post this later.